Welcome. Good morning. I'm going to start off, if I can, by recognizing, welcoming, and thanking our Emergency Management Commission Chairperson, Chief John Takip. And thank you for doing this today, but also thank you for the other 364 and a half days of the year for your support and leadership on the Emergency Management Commission.
Thanks, AJ. I'm John Takip, and truth be told, when I showed up at 7:30 this morning and then there was no one here and Patty had to tell me that the didn't start until 11:30, that's kind of the quality of leadership that you're dealing with right now. But I really appreciate AJ and the staff at Emergency Management for putting on these partnership meetings. They've been a great way to reach out to not only the people that we regularly operate with, but other elected, appointed, senior staff, mid-management, to do the 1 hour kind of emergency management 101 one-stop shop. And it's been a great learning tool. And so I would encourage you throughout AJ's presentation, ask questions if you have them, or if there are areas that you'd like to know more about, to make note of those, and we can follow up later. Maybe they're just a question that you need answered, or perhaps that's a topic that could end up being a lunch and learn or something else that throughout the year, there's a lot of interest in learning new things or getting to know the staff better and things like that. But on behalf of, for those of you who don't know, I'm the chair of the executive committee. Sheriff Schneider is the vice chair. And then we have 3 additional members, Chief Jim Clark from Johnson Grimes Metropolitan Fire Department, Chief Jared Ogborn from the Altoona Fire Department, and Chief Chris Scott from the West Des Moines Police Department. And we work with AJ and the entire staff, and really supportive of this. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Again, good morning. Welcome. For the next 45, 50 minutes or so, we're going to move through a lot of stuff, pretty fast paced, a lot of information. It's probably not going to be a lot of depth, but Chief Takip's message was exactly on point. If there's anything we can do to follow up, to provide more detail, to provide more background explanation, please, that's what we're here for. That's what one of our primary goals today is to invite that engagement, not just today for 45 or 50 minutes, but throughout the entire year. So thank you. Appreciate your time. I know you're all very busy. And so your time is appreciated here. If you would like a cup of coffee or water, please help yourself. It's right back here. Restrooms are back out through our reception area, and keep taking left-hand turns until you see both the men's and women's restrooms there. And so we'll have some time reserved at the end, but if there's something that, you know, the topic is fresh and you want to ask a question or make a comment, please just grab my attention and we'll take it as it comes. So if that sounds fair enough, we'll go ahead and push on. I want to start by recognizing our team. Super proud of every single one of them. It's probably the most exciting thing for me is to come to work every day and have a relationship with such talented, enthusiastic people that are here to do the right thing. We don't always get it right every time, but I can tell you that their hearts are in the right places. Just super high character people that are committed and compassionate. So we ask them to lead, we ask them to support, we ask them to do a lot of things to connect people. And I think hopefully you get the theme from today's topic is that we're here to do our best to unify, to try to bring together a lot of different interests and represent all of you and serve all of you. Because I look around the room and all of we call them partners. It's sort of a generic term, but please understand that it's meant with the deepest of appreciation, because every single one of you bring a skill set, resources, all that hard work and that same compassion that the members of our team have. I know all of you have that as well. And so it's exciting, and it's easy to come to work every day, even on some really ugly days that all of you are used to dealing with. It's still satisfying to be able to work with such a great group, our team and all of you. So if you haven't already met Dutch Geisinger, he's going to be our wizard behind the screen here, working the technology for me today. So Dutch does a lot of different things. Here recently, we've asked him to do a lot of stuff on the CAD to CAD project. many of you, I'd look around the room, you're deeply involved in that, so you understand the type of hard work that goes into that. He's also, his background is great. I wish we had more time to talk about the background of every single one of the people on the team, but does a lot of our vulnerability assessments, homeland security background, planning, just an all-around helper and problem solver. He's, no matter what comes up, he's like, Dutch, can you help out on this? And he's always saying, yep, I'll do what I can. So appreciate him. Laura, one of our newer members of the team, Laura Kaser, brought her on board about a year and a half ago. And so it seems like a lot longer because she has like hit the ground running, and she does a lot of our mitigation planning, our recovery planning, which is brand new. She's breaking fresh ground on recovery planning, which is not easy. She's involved in our healthcare coalition, which is really, some of the good things, believe it or not, there were several good things that came out of COVID. And so it really strengthened our healthcare partnerships. And so Laura is leading that effort, and a good connection there with the healthcare planning. And she also is one of our duty officers. So welcome, Laura. Lynn she's not here yet. She's on her way back as we speak. But she is our newest member of the team in all things 911 and communication. So she has, she's young, but she has probably more than a decade of experience with communications, 911. And so she does all that stuff with the 911 service board, his staff and fiscal agent to the service board, manages our Alert Iowa program, and is the facilitator, the convener of the Metro Interop Committee, as well as the PSAP Advisory Committee. Brett, probably a very familiar face if you watch TV for any period of time, but Brett's been with us now 2 years. So Brett leads our training and exercise programs. And it's easy to say training and exercise, but either one of them is a full-time job on itself. But Brett has, again, hit the ground running and does a very good job at making sure that he is asking all of you what plan or what training, what exercises are useful and beneficial. He also does a lot of our planning. And because he's pretty good at being in front of the camera, we throw him in as our primary PIO, as well as a duty officer. Cameron, a lot of the behind the scenes work that makes everything else possible, logistics, facilities, fleet management, all of those things. Also is very good at understanding our DLAN system. So if you got an email inviting you to this meeting, it was probably through DLAN. I say every year, the joke is so many people reply back to, hey, Dan, I'm sorry I can't make it. We have nobody on staff named Dan, but we do have a DLAN system. It stands for Disaster Local Area Network. It's an information management tool, but it's fairly complex, but Cameron and Patty helps Cameron with some of this stuff. But DLAN is a job by itself, but Cameron does a great job there. And he also has a great background in hazmat in Seaburny. And so we asked him to do all of our ESF 10 hazmat planning, as well as he's been a duty officer from the get-go. So a lot of experience with Cameron on our team. Patty, it's hard to put a title on Patty. Administrative assistant, I guess, is the official title, but the one at the bottom is probably her toughest job, people wrangler. So she has the job of keeping all of us organized. She's our payroll clerk, does grant management, does a lot of the just day-to-day things that make this whole system work well. So she's also taken charge of our social media platform. So we appreciate all the work that she does on all of those things and all the stuff that goes probably unnoticed, but it's certainly not unappreciated. Myself, I mostly just try to stay out of their way. I try to do my best to prioritize, to be that connection to the Emergency Management Commission, listen to their intent, and find a way to put very talented people on the right task and make things happen. Again, I appreciate working with all of them. I also fill in as a duty officer. If you'd like to know more about any of them, please, you can go to our webpage, or you can scan that QR code. That'll take you to a little bit more about them and their backgrounds, which are diverse And I think that's really what makes the team work so well, is that none of us were like traditional emergency managers and have always lived in that lane. I think that we all understand emergency management. We do our best to work as a team, but we come with different positions and backgrounds to make that happen, which I think is very special. Here's our mission, right? Is to help people and organizations be successful before, during, and after a disaster. And so when we talk about what does it mean to be successful, how many people have seen this image before, right? I love this. My wife got a poster in her office probably a dozen years ago, and I was like, I love that. And so I've stolen this off the internet, but I think it really speaks to a lot of the work that you all do and a lot of the work that we do, is that sometimes that what the public sees is really just kind of that after something bad has happened. And there is success there. And even on the worst days, in your line of work, there is a different level of measure of success that the general public probably doesn't understand nearly as well as you do. But I borrowed that graphic as sort of a theme to today's partnership meeting. And we can talk, and we will talk here for the next few minutes about the stuff above the surface of the water, the floods, the tornadoes, the extreme temperatures, the thunderstorms, the hazmat, those things that we have an opportunity to help coordinate, support, assist all of you that are out there doing the heavy work every, day in and day out, every day. And then later on this morning, we'll talk about some of the stuff that's below the surface of the water that enables all of that success. So last year, according to our numbers, it's probably actually more than that, but what we, at least took enough time to document were 139 different responses. You can see the breakdown there on the right-hand side of the screen. Many of them were related to single-family fires and assisting residents of those homes that were impacted by that fire, if they needed a place to go, working with the residents, working with the responders, working with our support organizations, like the Salvation Army, like the Red Cross, like United Way, like so many others, Animal Rescue League. So I love starting a list because I'm a list guy, but I always realize when I start a list, I'm going to leave somebody out. And so I apologize, but there are so many people that we get a chance to reach out and engage on, even, what many of you may, think, well, this is a one or two kind of bread and butter kind of thing. This is what we do every day, that what you do every day. And we get a chance to bring some others in to help the residents. 39 of those in the last year. Other big numbers on there, special events. We'll talk about those in a bit. Multifamily fire, apartments, and those kinds of things. But otherwise, extreme temperatures, hazmat, utility disruptions, a variety of different things that we find ourselves involved in. And it usually starts by any one of you saying, hey, is there anything you can do to help? And hopefully, many times the answer is yes, and it may be small, but we love to be able to help. There's other times where we're dealing with something and we're calling you to say, hey, can you, be a part of this? Can you bring your people and your services and your resources to bear to help out? And so that happens in both directions. The last year, 139, you can see an increase from the last couple years, which were right around that 118 and 119. Certainly a couple that you will all remember well, I'm sure. Started really on April 26th. And so our friends from Pleasant Hill, know this better than anyone in the room, is that an EF2 tornado really started just on the southeast portion of Des Moines, moved across the Des Moines River into Pleasant Hill, and then out into unincorporated Polk County. That map up there is really kind of tough to see, but just kind of shows the path that it took. Followed up almost a month later in Johnston, across unincorporated Polk County. I don't know how, because that space between Polk City and Ankeny now is not very wide in terms of the two communities are closing in on each other. And so there's not much space of without homes in there, but somehow the path found a way to kind of go through there without causing too much damage, but then moved into an area called White Oak. If you're familiar with the north of Elkhart, just a couple miles south of the Story County line, really did a lot of damage in some unincorporated village community up in northern Polk County. And then this one, I mean, by this time it was almost like, oh, another one. And if you lived in that path, it was not just, oh, another one, because it did quite a bit of damage. And I think that the media, covered it for a couple of days, but there were so many other tornadoes in Iowa this year, Greenfield being, just a very, very devastating one, that it didn't have probably as much coverage, at least in my perception, as the other ones. But for a tornado to cut through that much of an urbanized area, and how we did not lose lives or have more injuries, I don't know, but a pretty considerable path. Just, I guess, if we can say this, fortunate it wasn't a stronger tornado, but did a lot of damage to trees, a lot of damage to roofs and other things in our community. If I ask, just to try to summarize that in a minute or two of our observations on the positive side, which we want to focus on, is not surprising. It was neighbors helping neighbors. It was cities helping cities. It was the county helping the city and the city helping the county. All around, just tremendous collaboration and cooperation. Our EOC was activated for over a week for the Pleasant Hill tornado, over a week, just under a week, I think, maybe 5 days on the second tornado, and then for 2 or 3 days with the third tornado. So we had multiple operational period activations of our EOC. Many of you called, emailed, were here, so I appreciate all of that. And that coordination effort lasts for days and weeks after that, when we, officially, like, the EOC may not be activated, but there's still a lot of work continuing. Laura, in her recovery planning, pointed out some interesting information that I really liked, is that we had 80 residents that had really exhausted other options. They may not have had family, maybe they were physically unable to move the debris from their property to the right of way, and that many of you and other partners of ours, 211, I want to give them credit here of providing that information hub for people that needed help to call in and say, I need help. And that help could be like, open-ended, ... What is it? It might be tarping roofs. It might be moving debris. It might be, like they're having difficulty with their insurance provider. Any of those kinds of things, is that they could call 211. That information would be collected, and people like Laura and others would look at that list daily, multiple times a day, and say where and who can help try to solve that problem, and then connect people. Others, again, just the blessing of living, I think, in Iowa and the Midwest, is a willingness to help out. So we had a lot of volunteers that would call in and say, hey, I'm a person in a pickup truck and I'm willing to help. I got a chainsaw, or I'm a church group. Where can I, I've got 10 able-bodied people that are willing to help out. Where can I help out? And very quickly we could say, okay, here's your point of contact. Make a contact. We would let the person that asked for the help say, hey, this person is going to be contacting you in the next hour. And it just, that matchmaking, it was beautiful. It doesn't always happen that well. So I think we're moving in the right direction in utilizing the resources and the people and the goodwill of all of you to be able to match up those with needs, with those that are willing to help out. Dutch has become our extreme temperature guru. Find a way to put that on his business card, but he really has done a great job of working with all the partners you see on here. Again, I'm start a list, and I apologize if I leave you out because it's not intentional, but DART, Des Moines PD, the Sheriff's Office, Des Moines Fire, the CIS started a street outreach group, which has been very helpful. Polk County Community Family and Youth Services, the libraries, the senior centers, city halls. There's a lot of you that have said, hey, we'll be willing to raise our hand and act as a extreme temperature center, a place where people can come and get either warm or cool off, depending on what end of the thermometer we're on. But there's a lot of different things here that we're doing to make sure that some of our community's most vulnerable people are not literally left out in the cold or left out in the heat, and that it causes some other, it exacerbates the situation. So great work on our extreme temperature planning. Dutch, anything you want to? All good there?
No, I think you covered everything really well. I did want to say that ARL, we're working out some details on some things, but they're a great partner in that as well for looking out for our pets in those extreme temperature situations.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Planned events. You can see there the number that we supported, 17 planned events in 2024. When we say supported, that means there was some level of a joint event action plan. Some may be a 1-pager or a 2-pager. Some may be, I don't know, what was RAGBRAI? 70 some pages. It was very complex. But not all events are to the level of Ironman or the Capital City Pride Fest or the State Fair or Knot Fest. Any people go to Knot Fest? Okay. I was there. A couple folks from Des Moines in a command post in a room behind the scenes. But that was the Slipknot concert down at Des Moines Waterworks Park. Again, these things happen on the hottest days of the year. I don't know how it's scheduled that way, but it just happens. And so other things in the past, the NCAA basketball tournament. But really our goal here is to think about all the things, all the contingencies, all the things that could go wrong. And we're hoping for the best. We try to mitigate all of those things. But at least we have a plan that can transition us, from a good day, everybody enjoying themselves, to a really bad day where something doesn't go as planned. And that a joint event action plan is a predetermined transition of how we're going to do that before the event occurs. So one of the things I'll use as takeaways from our experience in 2024 is that, and I doubt that anybody's surprised by these, but the responses continue to increase. We see our responses, whether it's planned events or tornadoes or thunderstorms, the complexity of dealing with the impacts of those, it continues to increase. Our community is growing, population increases. But I think one of the things that is a challenge for all of us, and I think we're all willing to accept it, but it's the expectations of the public and the community of what we're doing with that. What we should be able to just wave a magic wand and fix all these problems, and it's not that easy. But I know by experience that it's a team like everybody in this room that works together to try to do everything humanly possible to meet those expectations. As we transition to the stuff that enables that success on the response side, we want to mention some things that hopefully this is informational. It's probably not the most exciting stuff in the world, but I think it's important to understand, some of the things like what is the governance of the Emergency Management Agency? And in the state of Iowa, a lot of people think, well, you're a department of county government. And the answer is yes and no. And what I think is the reason I say no is that we work equally for all of the cities as we do for Polk County. And that's starts with the organization in Iowa Code 29C that states that our Emergency Management Commission, the folks that we work for directly by Iowa Code, are the mayors of all the cities, the county sheriff, and a representative from the Board of Supervisors. And we have administrative rules, just like many of your organizations do, that say you have to do these things, you can't do these things. We have bylaws. All of these things are available on our website if you'd like to go and take a look at those. And if you're wondering, why are they involved in this? Why don't they do that? The answer is probably in there. And if you don't want to look at Iowa code, feel free to just call me or anybody that we introduced earlier on our team. We're happy to try to explain that, try to step through that to bring some understanding to your questions. Chief DeKip did a great job recognizing our executive committee. I really appreciate the opportunity to sit down and visit with them almost on a weekly basis, whether they like it or not. But it's usually a text message or an email or something that between myself and the executive committee to make sure that I'm not out of line with their intentions. But most of the time, it's just good old-fashioned advice. The experience on that executive committee is tremendous, and I appreciate them giving me that guidance to do what's right, stay out of trouble, and everything in between. So thank you to all of them. I meet with them 10 months out of the year, and I meet with the full commission 4 times out of the year. And I'll show you the schedule for 2025 coming up. Those are public meetings. The Emergency Management Commission is open to the public. It's open to all of you. So don't ever feel like you need an invitation to come. You're welcome to come. You're also very well represented by all of the city representatives, the mayors, and their appointed representatives. So if you're not there, I'm going to assume that things are okay. But again, don't hesitate to attend if you have any interest or have questions. I think that the structure of the Emergency Management Commission, especially the way Iowa, the state of Iowa does it for local emergency management commissions, gives us a great head start. Right out of the box, by our governance, we have a regional cooperation, right? It says that all the cities in the county, you're all in this together. You all have equal representation on the commission, and that enables a lot of other things like resource sharing, just the cooperation, the ability to share information with each other, and that we serve every jurisdiction equally. I have a lot of friends in other states that they work, just for the county or just for the big city, and then there's these villages and small towns that sort of get left out. And I hope that's not the case. We strive every day to make sure that that's not the case here in Iowa and in Polk County, that we work equally for Alleman and Runnels as we do the city of Des Moines and Polk County. It's easy to point to Iowa code and administrative code and say, those are our authorities and that's what we'll do. Well, that's maybe 2% of it. The other 98% of it comes on the right-hand side of what you're seeing in front of you on this voluntary cooperation. It's just good people trusting each other to work together. It generates a lot of that collaboration. We're able to, contribute to each other's efforts and hopefully work consistently on behalf of the people of Polk County. And when we say, what does it mean to work together? We try not to be directive. In fact, we have very relatively narrow pieces where the emergency management agency can tell anybody what to do by mandate. So we depend heavily on being, a voluntary cooperation and collaboration. And so many times we're there to convene a conversation. We're there to facilitate a process. We may ask some challenging questions. We may ruffle some feathers, not intentionally, but if the question needs to be asked to clarify, we are there to do that. And it's really more of an orchestration that many of you are playing those instruments. And so we're mostly just doing what's on the right-hand side there, is setting the tempo, doing our best to listen carefully to what your needs are, to understand, hey, I heard in a meeting that so-and-so is trying this and they're very good at that, or they got a new piece of equipment or a widget or a gadget, and letting somebody else know. And so a lot of that is unifying performers. And who are the performers? I sometimes describe this as kind of a 3-lane freeway here, that we all need to be moving forward. We're all kind of going at different directions or different speeds at different times. But if all 3 of these performers are not at the table, something is not going to work well as well as it could. And so we have a policy group. We, remind them that, please, we need your strategic thinking. The performers here are elected officials or the executive appointed officials like administrators and managers. And we're looking for, what is the strategic intent? On the other side, we have a tremendous group of field personnel that are more tactically focused. They're the folks from the incident command post and out there, in the elements, doing all of that really difficult work. And they're executing a lot of strategies. They have tremendous capabilities, capacity, great problem solvers. And so that leaves that space in the middle. And that's where emergency management fits in this operational coordination environment. And so we're trying to match up what resources and capabilities exist at the field level with realistic expectations from a strategic point from our policy group. And so we're, trying to translate, what it means for a mayor or a city administrator to say, this is what needs to happen. Should we be doing this? Working with our field personnel to say, yes, this is possible, or no, that's not possible. If we do it a different way, we can still achieve the same outcome. Things like that. That's where emergency management, that's our lane. And we try to do our best to stay in that lane, but we have to sometimes reach into the policy group and pull information, ask the right questions of the mayors in the policy group, and then also do the same with our tactical field personnel, is to say what is realistically possible, because there may be things that can be done that our executive policy group isn't aware of. And so a lot of times it's just, recognizing who's in the lanes next to us and making the best of the combination of all three of our efforts. Okay, this is meant to be funny. This is meant to be a joke. So take a moment, take a look at that, and you'll probably say, well, it's not entirely untrue, because there are many cases where it could be an unfamiliar place. And one of the reasons we do these, and Chief Takip said it very well, but one of the reasons we do this is to make sure that you have a chance to be here and ask us questions before the next disaster happens. If all of you show up and do good work, want to do good work, but it's the first time you've been here, it's the first time you've met us, it's the first time you've met somebody else in the room, things are probably not going to go as well as they could. And so we try to make sure it's not an unfamiliar place, that we are gathering officials. I can't make the decisions any more popular, but when we work together, we can try to balance that as much as possible. We usually don't have all the resources we need, but creatively we solve problems. And when I say we, it's all of you as well. And so we try to overcome that somewhat tongue-in-cheek definition of an emergency operations center. And it really comes down to things like this, the training and exercise stuff that Brett invites you to. Those are the times to make our relationships stronger and more familiar. Over here on the wall, you're not going to be able to read that on the screen. You probably can't read it from where you're sitting, but we have an organizational chart that if we have a sort of all hands on deck organization built out to deal with something like, let's say, a flash flood on July 1st at 2 o'clock in the morning, many of those boxes get filled. Fortunately, many of our other things, we don't have to fill every single box on that org chart, but basically it's built out to say we have a policy group that the EOC director would report to. The EOC director convenes an operations, planning, logistics, and finance administration. And then from there, we start to break down a really big, ugly problem into smaller and smaller pieces until all of you can come up with ideas to solve that problem. And so it's really what I just said. It's taking something complex and big and breaking it down to smaller and smaller pieces. And the people that fill these boxes are the ones that solve that in emergency management with a staff of 7. And I think I should count the number of boxes on there. It's probably 40 some. We can't fill all of them, obviously. And so we ask many of you to come and help fill those boxes for us, for planned events and for disasters. This is stuff that we do somewhat quietly. We don't mean it to be quiet, but a lot of times people don't find this too exciting. So a lot of times we have to really pull people into this. but it's things like a hazard analysis and risk assessment. We're going to ask questions for a formal process every 5 years to say, what do you think is the biggest risk to you and your community? Why? Is it vulnerability? Is it speed of impact? Is it, what other factors and elements of that make it a concern of yours? And we put that all into a process, and we use that to inform our hazard mitigation planning. We use that to inform our planning and training programs. We use that to inform resource investments, so that we're making decisions based on as much of an objective evaluation of risk as possible. Because if you just asked the general public perceived risk, it's going to be the last thing that happened to them, right? That by human beings, it's just what happens to us. And so on, late April or late May, if you ask people what the biggest risk to them after the tornadoes just went through Polk County, I'm pretty confident to say they would say tornadoes. Our hazard analysis risk assessment balances 20 plus years of history of these things, and kind of puts that into perspective. It doesn't mean that tornadoes aren't a risk. It just means that we need to, put that and evaluate that objectively next to other things like hazardous materials and flooding and flash flooding and terrorism. Like I said, one of the things it does is informs resource management. And so when we talk about resources, it's a pretty generic term, but it could mean anything from personnel and teams all the way to equipment, supplies. Emergency management by ourselves, we own very few resources. We do own some, and most of those were simply we possess it, but most of the time it's you and your personnel that are putting it to use. Most of the times we're a broker. We simply do what I mentioned a moment ago, is we know that somebody else has something and somebody else needs it, and we put people in touch and make sure that both parties understand, what the situation is. So that all has to start well before the disaster happens. We have 3 mutual aid agreements amongst these 3 entities. So that enables better reimbursement. Our planning is a lot of stuff. I put a lot of stuff on this slide. I'm not going to read through it, but some of the highlights here on the hazard mitigation plan, it has allowed us to access almost $24 million since 2007. And I knew this number was big, but when we were updating our information for this presentation, it was a surprisingly big number. So because of that plan, it allows all of you, your jurisdictions, to apply for mitigation projects. And those mitigation projects have totaled almost $24 million since 2007. So, and if you do the math further, I think the national numbers is that for every dollar invested in hazard mitigation is a $6 avoided future costs. And so I'm not going to do the math in public because I'll embarrass myself, but take that number times 6. And I think that that's what the big story here is of because of your and our planning, getting together and thinking about things, putting things to paper, being able to document our expectations, it's resulted in that kind of return on investment. An even bigger number on the comprehensive emergency plan. Because we have a comprehensive emergency plan, because you have all taken the time to help build that with us, we've been able to access $60 million of post-disaster rebuilding on public assistance, public infrastructure. Cameron, if I'm off the rails here, correct me. Good. And so the number that absolutely is tied to that number is 10% of that. Without our plan, we all pay 10% more. When I say we, taxpayers, cities, county, school districts. And so again, that amount that is the time that is spent in planning does have a financial return on investment to all of us as residents, taxpayers, and just members of this community. Damage assessment, this is not fun work to do because it means something bad has probably happened. But many of you and your personnel go out there and very quickly start gathering some information to allow us to be able to better allocate resources, to prioritize, to make better decisions, to be able to share more information with our community, to snuff out rumors, to be able to access funding through the state and federal governments, to inform our long-term, basically our transition from response into recovery, and to do post-incident analysis so that when we rebuild, we're doing it in a way that is not as vulnerable as the last time. We've got some exciting new tools for damage assessment on the horizon. Some of these are with remote sensing, aerial photography, drones, but what we have right now is an ability by everybody, I'm sure in this room, by putting a damage assessment tool in your hands, and it's doing that through a mobile app. And so when we ask our partners to go out and do a damage assessment, they're collecting information in real time. It's reporting back to a central cloud-based system, and we're able to see those dots showing up on the map and damage assessment levels. In the future, we'll be able to tie that to the assessor's information and be able, literally in almost real time, come up with finite damage assessments that we're able to roll up to the state along with our other counties and be able to process a request for state and federal assistance much more quickly. A number of tools that we have for communication and warning, all the way from what I've talked about. I'd ask you to follow up. If your community has not promoted the Polk County Alert Iowa system, I'd encourage you to do that. It's free to all of our residents. They can sign up, they can customize how they want to receive and for what hazards they receive that information for. It might be for tornadoes, it might be for floods, it might be for a law enforcement incident in their neighborhood. Could be a variety of different things. And then some of our more traditional tools, NOAA Weather Alert Radio, emergency alert systems, been around since what, the 60s probably. Our outdoor warning sirens, we could be here all day talking about the pluses and minuses of those. And so we have a number of different tools. The bottom line here, ladies and gentlemen, is that we recommend everyone, including ourselves and the general public, is to take a layered approach, because not one of these is the right answer for everybody. And so many times it's a layered approach to be able to receive the warning for what you want at the time you want. We also work with our local public safety answering points, PSAPs, communication centers, on things like land mobile radio. Again, we use Alert Iowa for other things within the dispatch centers, and then DLAN. Our goal here is to have reach, accessibility, and some level of redundancy. Always trying to build knowledge, skills, and abilities through our training program. Brett has done a great job of building out our website. On there, you'll find recordings of past training. So if you weren't able to make the last lunch and learn, within a few days after that, it'll be posted there. We love having you here in person because we get to chat about friends and family and pets and everything else. But if you're unable to make it here in person, check out our webpage for recordings. There's also upcoming training that we host here, as well as other places across the state of Iowa that we think you might be interested in. So, check often. Our exercise program allows us to evaluate the value and effectiveness of our plans and training. It's not a pass-fail. We're not here to say, okay, AJ, you did this and you personally failed. It's not a personal attribution of success. It's really, were our plans well written? Were they understood? Are they clear? Was our training effective? Do people have the knowledge, skills, the competencies to be able to execute on the plan? And we do that through a series of what we call a progressive exercise cycle. I don't want to talk about the negative, but I will for just a moment. Bear with me. One of the things we see that is unsuccessful is when people say, well, we think we should do something. We haven't taken the time to write a plan. We've never done any training, but we want to do a full-scale exercise. I will tell you that that's not going to end well. If it ends well, you got lucky. It was accidental success. Most of the time, it's built on a foundation of the plan, doing some training to build the competencies, and then doing a tabletop exercise, a discussion base, and then working your way up to functional and full-scale exercises. So if you disagree with me or want to know more about any of that, talk to Brett. He'd be happy to walk you through any and all of that. One of the things that was a great success by all accounts, it doesn't mean that everything went perfectly because we learned a ton, was an active threat working group, full-scale exercise out at Prairie Meadows in October. And so, we have an active threat work group that's been doing a lot of great work all the way back since 2017, I think. And so really kind of done a few different drills and exercises, but this by far has been the most comprehensive exercise. And we did exactly what I was just preaching a moment about, is that we took the time to make sure we have a solid concept of operations, that we built a plan and protocols on it, that there was training done all over the county by fire, police, EMS, communications, others and others and others to be able to, implement and to execute. And so back in October, we put that all out there and definitely learned a lot. There's a after action report that if you're interested in reading that, hopefully many of you in the room have already seen that. But if you haven't, and you're interested in that, let me know or visit with Brett. He'll be able to get that into your hands. For public information, we're doing that right here and now. But there's other things we do. We're oftentimes invited to attend symposiums and conferences like many of you are. And we go out, visit with schools. We do community outreach events. We go to the Rotary clubs and the Lions Club and all those things. And that we love doing that. But that's all stuff that we want to do before the disaster happens. Once we get into an emergency or a disaster, our focus kind of shifts more towards these things on the right-hand side. We produce flash reports. A lot of times you may have received a one-page thing that says, hey, if you don't know yet, this blizzard is coming and we expect these impacts. It's not that you probably don't already know that the blizzard is coming, but we want to make sure that there is, that, hey, the band's going to come back together potentially, right? It's that the military calls them warning orders, kind of like, hey, something's about to happen and we might have to get to work. And so that's what that flash report really does. Once we get into a response, a sustained response, we'll produce situation reports or sit reps that are telling many of you that aren't at the table directly of what's happening, what's going on, so that we have common understanding, a common operating picture of what has happened, what we're doing about it, what we're asking others to do about it, what we're asking the public to do about it. And there's a variety of other tools there that many of you are probably familiar with traditional media, social media. I'll put in a plug for Joint Information Center. We have a great group of PIOs. They meet monthly. Metro Media Group, many of you have gone to those. That group is the relationship that sustains our ability to pull together the subject matter experts that have the credibility to talk about their area, whether it's law enforcement or fire, EMS, or the hospitals, or emergency management, or others that I'm, again, starting these lists. But that Joint Information Center is really cooperation amongst all of us to get the information out. If you're interested in how we spend our time all the way down to the quarter hour, we have a system that does that. Patty is our subject matter expert there. And if we go more than a couple days without getting our information put in there, you're going to hear from Patty. But it's appreciated because sometimes we get busy. This is important to make sure that our effort is lining up with the priorities that we're being asked for by the Emergency Management Commission. Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'm talking quickly because I want to save time for questions and comments. But here is a preview of the proposed fiscal year 26. It just seems weird to say that. I don't know how these years fly by, but fiscal year 26 proposed budget. On the right-hand side, it's outlined in the yellow box, is for the Emergency Management Commission. We expect to begin the year with a fund balance of about $487,000. We expect to bring in about $1.3 million. And that is in some areas the Board of Supervisors contributes significantly. All of the cities across Polk County contribute significantly through a 2080 agreement for 50 cents per capita. We have the countywide hazmat response runs through our budget. And so there's a contract between the city of Des Moines and Polk County for those services. We have just under $40,000 that we expect to bring in through grants this upcoming year, and a miscellaneous $400 that is kind of a hodgepodge of things. So that total revenue of 1.3 is going to be expected to be outspent by about $36,000 in this upcoming fiscal year, because our expenditures will be just under 1.33, excuse me, just under $1.34 million. And so we break down our expenditures pretty broadly by personnel, grants, supplies, and services. Again, if you're interested in any of the details, the spreadsheet that has all the details is about that long in like 8 font. We will be happy to share that, more importantly, happy to discuss all of that with you. But this provides a summary. Of course, working through the executive committee and the Emergency Management Commission in February. I think it's February 20, it's up there probably, 19th. February 19th will be a public hearing and the consideration of this budget by the Emergency Management Commission. So if you have any questions or concerns about this, really would appreciate hearing from you before the 19th. That way we have some opportunity to work with you. But if not, if you're just interested and want to show up at that public hearing, you're welcome to at 2 p.m. on the 19th. Okay, looks similar format, but I've shifted to the 911 Service Board. Lynn's here. Lynn, welcome. So the 911 Service Board's proposed budget for fiscal year 26, we expect to begin the fiscal year with just over $4 million, bringing in $1.3 million from the landline surcharge. So anybody that has a cell phone here in the room, you're paying that $1 per month that comes into the state of Iowa and then gets distributed out to each county's 911 Service Board. And so for landline, that's 1.3 million. For, I'm sorry, that was wireless I just got done talking about. I'm sorry to confuse you. For landline, those are still out there, especially our commercial landlines, $1.35 million, about $110,000 of interest based on reserves in the account. Expenditures broken down by those 5 we call business units, total about $4.1 million. Those business units, the 911 Service Board Administration, this would be to provide there's a 2080 agreement between the Emergency Management Commission and the 911 Service Board to provide staff and support to the Service Board. Joint projects are things like paying for collection of phone lines together. Anything that the 3 communication centers have in common that is relatively equal, we try to get some economy of scale and pay for that centrally rather than divide it out into 3. That's joint projects. The Des Moines PSAP, about $2.4 million. The Polk County Sheriff's Office, about $784,000, and Westcom, about $750,000. The reason that some are significantly greater than others, it varies fiscal year to fiscal year based on different projects and programs that those 3 communication centers have going. So sometimes, in this case, Des Moines PSAP looks like they're probably going to have a more significant project coming up in fiscal year 26, and the 2 others probably more of a balanced budget where they're not dipping into reserves as much as Des Moines in this example for this fiscal year, but that varies fiscal year to fiscal year. So expect to end the fiscal year 26 with about $2.8 million. Okay. The meetings, they got 4 of those meetings in 2025. And if I'm going through this too quickly, we're happy to share this back out with all of you. So I see some of you taking photos. That's awesome. But if you don't want to try to write down everything, we'll be happy to share this with you. I want to close out on what are our horizon. We talked a lot about some of the things that, kind of this metaphorically speaking, were the icebergs, the disasters, and other things that we're navigating on a day-to-day basis and a week-to-week basis. we hope that it's smooth sailing in 2025. As soon as we previewed this presentation yesterday, I had 6 other members on my team said, "Oh no, he didn't." So if you're in the public safety world, you're familiar with this thing, the jinx of saying, "Oh, things are going to be smooth sailing." Well, we really do hope they are. I'm going to be optimistic, but it will not be a quiet year, right? It will be a very busy year because we have a lot of things that we want to keep working on. There'll be things that pop up that we have to address, but we know that CAD to CAD will continue. We expect to do a digitalization of our field operations guide. Our planning, training, and exercise programs will continue. Lynn has great plans for expanding the use of the Polk County Alert Iowa. Also the integration of the Integrated Public Alert Warning System called IPAWS. Again, just a little teaser. If you don't know what that is, reach out to Lynn. Our active threat work group has some great stuff on the horizon, including in the first couple weeks of March, they're going to be doing a comms exercise. That was one of the specific follow-ups that was asked for after the Prairie Meadows exercise. Laura got a lot of things. There's always a list longer than we can get done, but I know there's some exciting things that she's working on with the Des Moines Healthcare Coalition, including surge planning, working with Central Iowa EMS directors. I know we've got some members of that group here in the room today on EMS hospital liaison program. So, and that's just a handful of bullets that I could fit on this slide. So we'll stop there and take any questions. We're happy to spend as much time as you'd like here. So I realize I consumed probably 9.5 minutes of the Q&A. I just get too excited about this stuff. I'm sorry. But so much to tell. What questions do you have?
I just want to take a couple seconds to make about 5 points. One is there's a lot of good emergency management personnel in the state of Iowa. None of them are as good as the team that we have in Polk County. I don't take that lightly at all. We really have some real talent here, and it's different than the rest of the state. Second thing is, for what any of us contribute to emergency management, none of us can afford this size of staff with this capability and this kind of outcome and return on investment. I think that's clear. Third, the plans that we work on are not plans that break glass in case of emergency pullout plan. Our local operations inform those plans. Those plans inform our local operations. And that gives me confidence in number 4. When you looked at the chart of the EOC and there was all those boxes, and oh my gosh, who fills all those boxes? There's only 7 of you for that big fire you've got downtown in Des Moines. I could have a Rob Chapano sitting in the EOC doing fire planning for me while we have an operation downtown because we train on a system. We know how fires work. It doesn't have to be a member of the Des Moines Fire Department. I just need someone who knows fire, who knows the system, who can work in the EOC. That's how those boxes are filled. And the 5th thing is, particularly since we had 6 tornado events, because we have this level of cooperation and collaboration in the county, the public works departments of all of the different agencies have really done a great job to say, this is how we're going to handle debris during natural disasters, so that 20 communities can let 500,000 people know that on Monday morning, this is how we're going to handle your trash, whether the tornado came through your community or not. And that really gives elected and senior appointed officials some confidence in. That's why we have this system. That's why this works. And all that work was done not when there was an emergency, but because we had the right relationships. So if you had to take a couple of things away, pride, return on investment, we have confidence in this, and it really works in real time. So good job.
I just had a question for you, AJ, and I want to second Chief DeKip's comments. Really appreciate getting an opportunity to work with your team. And my question was really more of a follow-up to now that the county hazard mitigation plan has been updated and we're now have the new 5-year cycle. What are some thoughts in terms of, I know that plan identified a number of countywide opportunities for all of the communities in Polk County and other counties to work together on some of these kind of bigger changes that we're seeing in disasters to start to do some of that forward planning on some systems. what are some things that are maybe bubbling to the top, or do you see in 25 the commission having some conversation around that in terms of how we maybe put some of all of our resources together to start working on some of those bigger hazard mitigation opportunities that were identified in that plan?
Excellent question. Laura.
Yeah.
Point person on this.
Perfect. Oh, I appreciate you asking that question. So I think first thing we need to do is encourage all of our jurisdictions and agencies to approve the plan. So if you haven't done that yet, I'm tracking you down via email, phone calls, text message if I have your cell phone number. So that's job one. The next thing we want to do is make sure that people understand what the process is. So we just had a meeting last week where we invited jurisdictions to come in and understand, okay, so you have all of these projects listed on your hazard mitigation plan. How do we take that project that's written down and turn it into a shovel-ready project? And so we had a representative from the state of Iowa here walking us through what that looks like. So I'm going to continue to offer learning opportunities for people who need to understand what the process is. It can feel very overwhelming. There's a website that you need to go to. You need to submit a notice of interest, and all of that seems overwhelming. And so we really want to break that down and help people understand how you make that process that seems very overwhelming easy to do. And one of the things that I learned is just making sure that people know from your jurisdiction what you want to get done, and the people that you need to help understand that are the people at the state. And so I'm going to continue to walk alongside jurisdictions and help them publicize, this is what we'd like to do. Now, how do we move it from this is our wish list to something that we can actually get done?
Great answer. Only thing I would add on top of that is, in terms of things that are bubbling to the top, pardon the pun, is probably stormwater management. I think it's the most complex interjurisdictional issue here in the metro area. It's also I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but a huge, expensive problem to manage as well. So, we saw a lot of mitigation projects become identified after the flash floods in 2018. Unfortunately, many of those projects were identified prior to 2018, to your credit. One of the things that we have a challenge with nationally is, and here in the state, is mitigation investments are made in a post-disaster environment. And until we fix that nationally, we're always chasing the last thing. And so we'll continue to work on that. But many of you have lobbyists, many of you talk with your senators and Congress people at the federal level and at the state level, is if we can rethink mitigation investments and do it more pre-disaster rather than post-disaster, we're going to be in better shape to fix the things we know about before the bad thing happens. So I could go on about that too, but that's a great question. Obviously, Matt, you're well tied into a lot of that stuff. So other questions? Comments, ideas?
I gotta ask somebody who has the ARL. So what animal welfare needs come up when you're planning for these potential disasters, and how do you resolve them?
As a pet owner myself, I mean, I don't know what the numbers are. You probably know how many households, but it's probably well over 50%, I'm guessing. It's rare if we have a house fire where when we get the numbers from dispatch, we'll get it. It's broken down very quickly, but it's going to be 2 adults, 2 children, 2 dogs. And a lot of times the 2 adults and 2 children can maybe go to a hotel for the night. It's a hotel accept pets, maybe, maybe not. The other piece that is coming up frequently is the extreme temperature plan. So Dutch, I don't know if you want to talk about that. Many of our homeless have pets, and it's difficult to find shelter for them in public spaces with their pets.
Absolutely. So a lot of the things that you'll see us push out on social media deal with how to take care of your pets in cold weather, because sometimes they get forgotten. We think about how we're going to take care of ourselves and our kids, and we still got to put our dogs outside, right? Those kind of things. So we are we encourage social media posts about the welfare of our pets, other animals, including farm animals that we have to take care of. we steal a lot of the information that ARL posts. We use that for our posts as well. AJ mentioned the homeless population. Many of those folks have pets as well, and our shelters don't accept pets. So we run into an issue with, we can bring our homeless population to a shelter. Many of those people refuse to go in if they're going to get separated from their pets, or we don't want to turn people away because they've got pets. So we're working through some issues with ARL and how we can find a better solution. How can we temporarily house those pets in an extreme temperature situation, still get people inside to take care of them, but take care of the animals as well. That comes up every year. We work through a lot of things. We met a month ago now. We kind of talked through some things that we're working through details on, but again, those are some of the things that pop up every single time we have extreme temperatures or extreme weather.
You guys have done a magnificent job with several hoarding situations that law enforcement has been involved in, and like how do we solve this problem? And you guys saved the day. I just don't know really any other resources that are possible without you guys being involved in things like that. And a lot of times it's the cats and the dogs, a lot of cats, but then there's also the large animal stuff, and we've had livestock rollovers and other things. You guys have provided some great subject matter expertise on. So
I appreciate it. And one of the things that's come up too is that we talked about the 6 tornadoes last year. And there's a lot of times these areas are restricted for obvious reasons. There were 6 tornadoes last year. A lot of times these areas are restricted for obvious reasons for safety. But there's a search and rescue going on. And certainly we'd love to be able to help out with that as well. And so just when you're considering plans and things like that, how can we be part of that?
yeah, of course, if there's, I can't speak for our friends in law enforcement, but when you're part of the solution like that, if we can overcome a barrier, if it's a restricted area or whatever, let us know. Again, we're that orchestrator, try to get you connected with folks that can get you safely in there, do your job, and back out. Concerns, topics of interest that haven't come up but I think might be important. I didn't introduce one of our honorary members of our team, Jay Knox. Jay is the executive director of Safeguard Iowa Partnership. Happens to office out of here, and so we love seeing him several times a week. But Safeguard Iowa Partnership is really a magnificent organization that allows us to connect with the private sector. And there are hundreds, maybe thousands by now, of individual members of Safeguard Iowa Partnership. But Jay, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to put a plug in for Safeguard Iowa Partnership. Put you on the spot here. I know this wasn't rehearsed, but.
And with the audience here, it is a public-private collaboration, and so we engage from both sides, and it's wonderful being in Iowa for the way that the state has always handled emergencies and disasters, and we remain here. And if you're not a partner of Safeguard Iowa, we'd love to have you as a contact and continue to expand our database of partners across the state. Thank you.
Jay does statewide work, but we definitely appreciate his involvement here in Polk County. I really can't think of any disaster in the last 10 years or so that we haven't leveraged Safeguard Iowa Partnership to communicate information out to the private sector, but also more importantly as to what are the needs of the private sector and how are they able to help others. And so again, we broker through Safeguard Iowa Partnership a lot of the private sector involvement.
Hey, what's the cost to get to become a member of Safeguard Iowa?
It's free.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't mean to keep anybody any longer than you want to stay here, but you're welcome to stay. We always say that this is just as much your place as it is ours. And we welcome you back the next time. And until then, be safe. Enjoy the 50-degree weather. If anybody's really into tradition, we broke it big time today because I think the last 6 years we've done these partnership meetings, we've had blizzards or extreme cold. So we welcome the 50 degrees and sunny. Take care, everybody. Thank you.